Want to learn about Stadia's secret sauce? Well, let's just talk a little bit about it today. Join us as we as Stadia Live reveals, a secret to its performance-leading technology. It's SDO Daily, baby, live. Let's get into it.
Stay sick cause I follow my gut. They say I was pushing my luck. I'ma push me a matte all black truck. Oh, I'm not sorry.
What's up, people? What's up, people? What's up, people? It is your boy MM2K back again with a special episode of SDO Daily. Yes, I am live. I can see your chats. Shout out to Proto P. He said, me already know about this before the article came out. Hey, shout out to the homie Proto P, who went and was doing some janky stuff behind the scenes and says that he revealed the final game in the Summer Community Championships. What are the Summer Community Championships, you might be asking? Well, the Summer Community Championships are your opportunity to win over $1,000 in cash prizes at this point. You know what? Let me stop talking. Let me show you something. You can win over $1,000 in collective cash prizes by joining the Summer Community Championships, playing Stadia games with Stadia features, and possibly playing the games that the homie Proto P said that he revealed. We don't know yet. We don't know. Maybe we were playing with your mind. Who knows? But definitely, you don't want to miss out on this. Definitely go to stadiahunters.com/summer-championship, or you can just go to the Summer Community Championship webpage on Twitter by going to the Summer CC and go at Summer CC on Twitter. All right. Do yourself a favor. Don't miss out on that cash. All right. Now, back to the situation at hand. We had a crazy situation, y'all. Crazy situation, y'all. Where Stadia told you a little bit about its secret sauce that it got running behind the scenes. Have you ever played a Stadia game and you realize, hold on, when I played this thing on Monday, I noticed little quirks here and there. But now that I'm playing it on Wednesday, it's so much smoother. Have you ever noticed that? And then you go around and you ask questions and people are like, no, it ain't that. And you know what I'm saying? You whatever. And we've heard things like A/B testing and stuff like that going on. But we've always thought to ourselves, no, something else is happening here. Some other juices are flowing that vastly improved my Stadia experience. And Stadia doesn't always come out on a regular basis and talk about their stuff. They're still in the building phase, right? So they're not always braggadocious on the mic with the gold chains and break dancing and pop locking, right? As the way we want them to. However, you're not crazy. If you thought that, you're not crazy anymore. You weren't talking to yourself. Let me show you a tweet that kind of summarizes this from 5,000 feet, and we'll go into the specifics shortly. But again, let me show you something. This is a tweet that I sent out yesterday where I specifically say, as many of us have attested to, see the attached for a great read. Along with the AI and machine learning components, you have the pipeline caches, which in Stadia's case uses previous sessions to make vast improvements by simply using prior game sessions. And I take an excerpt from what we're about to review and we talk about it. All right. Great article. It's very lengthy. And I know a lot of you looked at that and said, nah, I'd rather hear it than read it. Some of y'all like me. Okay. So we're going to do just that. We're going to go over the Stadia article that's titled Cutting Jank and Load Times in the Cloud. Let's make this bigger for the people in the bag. Okay, yeah, we'll accept your cookie, Stadia. All right. The article reads as follows. Games are an interesting medium where visualization, controls, and sound become an extension of your experience until your vision stutters and you jump 2 feet forward from where you were standing. As an immersive experience, we also expect a smooth visual experience and transitions between areas to happen quickly. It can feel intolerable if a load screen takes a minute or two to complete. Janky gameplay due to pipeline cache misses are shown above. You see how it's skipping, and then below it's a similar gameplay without pipeline caches misses. See, it's a little bit smoother. A game is made up of many kinds of files, movies, audios, the game binary itself, textures, images and descriptions of objects, etc. Some of these artifacts aren't actually pre-generated though, at least not fully. Notably, graphic pipeline, graphic shader workloads, and pipeline caches. In this post, we'll be talking about graphic pipeline and pipeline caches. Compilation of graphic pipelines is one of the common reasons that load screens can take a long time, and why your visuals may jump and stutter, aka jank. Jank can occur for a number of reasons, but jank resulting from compiling pipelines can be fixed by storing the compiled pipelines in a pipeline cache, or some people like to call it cache, but we're going to call it cache here, which is essentially just an object that stores the compiled pipelines for a given system. We'll provide a peek into how Stadia works to provide pipeline caches for players running games on Stadia, and thanks to cloud data aggregation, how Stadia can remove this kind of stutter across all users over time. If you notice a game running better than it used to, it may be thanks to players like you doing your part by playing the game. So we're about to get into this. We're going to talk about the Vulkan using pipeline caches, how it's being implemented by Stadia, and how your gameplay helps the efforts that are already provided by Vulkan and some of the stuff that the devs do already. Shout out to Jay Smith in the chat. He says, what's good? He says, you got to chop this up into YouTube clips. Maybe so. Maybe I'll do that. That's a great idea. The homie KK, I'm not. Please vouch for me then to the crazies. Chariot Man Gaming in the house, good to see you. And Liam McGee, let's hear some secrets. Let's talk about it. Let's go into Vulkan pipelines. Stadia uses Vulkan Graphics API, which uses compute and graphics pipelines to run a game. Let's do it like this. The core of a pipeline is the shader, which is a small program for something in the game. Some simple games have only a handful of pipelines, while larger titles can have hundreds of thousands. The time that it takes to compile a pipeline also varies wildly, but let's assume they take 100 milliseconds on average. If a game needs to build 35,000 pipelines in a load screen, then there's about a minute of work to be done. A more powerful GPU can help, but it only gets you so far and at a significant expense. Interesting stuff. The compilation problem then can also arise during gameplay when a new element is encountered. Say you're exploring a world and a new monster comes along that needs 10 pipelines to be compiled so that it can be rendered. Some games will drop off frames until it's ready, which will result in stuttering, hitching, or other jank. Others will continue to render the rest of the scene until the monster is ready, which can also be jarring when the monster suddenly pops into the screen. A pipeline cache addresses the issues by storing the compiled pipelines. The 100 millisecond compilation time for a pipeline becomes a 1 millisecond lookup when it's found in the pipeline cache, so that 1 minute of load screen work now takes under a second, and the pipelines for the monster are ready in the same frame as they were invoked. Shout out to Charles Oran in the house. Compiled pipelines in a pipeline cache are only valid on hardware and graphic drivers that are compatible with the ones where the pipeline cache was created. When neither of these changes, the compiled pipelines may no longer work and the pipeline will need to be recompiled. On a console, many of the compiled pipelines can be collected and shipped with the game since the hardware and drivers are stable, but can cache misses for PC games, pipelines are typically compiled during the game installation process, or a pipeline cache miss in which they are written to the PC's local storage to avoid further cache misses issues for that user. Graphics pipelines in Stadia. Now, what is this? How does Stadia implement this? They just went over how it works in Vulkan, in comparison to PC and other places. And they also gave a little description of what developers may do as far as trying to alleviate this problem using pipelines. But what specifically does Stadia do? Let's talk about it. For cloud gaming, we know we can do better to prevent pipeline cache misses before a player plays a game. Stadia leverages the capabilities of more modern graphic architectures to generate pre-compiled graphic pipelines. Game developers can include the data needed to construct a pipeline cache, which we call pipeline cache source data. This data includes the shader programs as well as the data used to build render passes, descriptor sets, and other objects used to build the pipelines for their games. With this source data, we can ensure that we can compile the pipelines to populate the game's pipeline cache ahead of updates to Stadia's hardware fleet and graphic drivers. This way, issues resulting from pipeline compilation are prevented for players launching games on any configuration of hardware and graphic drivers in the fleet. And they give you an example here. Capturing all pipelines for gamers can be monumental or even impossible task. Pipelines may have computer-generated properties where parts of different systems combine at runtime to generate a new pipeline. This can be evident in games like Destiny 2, where a player can mix and match parts and color combinations of their avatar, but the armor itself has shine and reflection and coarse textures. The combination of all these static shaders with the dynamic shaders that get added during gameplay, like on Destiny 2 running around on Titan while standing in a solar grenade, make up this graphics pipeline that need to be compiled. Each of these combinations are hard to generate ahead of time, so there are still some hiccups caused by pipelines compiling while playing. We, as in Stadia, solve this by building our systems to look more like a PC, but with a distributed pipeline cache directory. When players encounter a pipeline, that need to be compiled at runtime, we try to collect the source data for those pipelines at the end of the session. As many of those pipelines are dynamically generated, we set up several differential privacy settings to merge only pipelines that are identical across users and automatically delete those that aren't. These pipelines are later merged while employing differential privacy and ensuring game stability with the pipelines provided by the developer. And the new augmented pipeline caches are deployed back into the fleet. So the next time any player runs into the same scenario, they won't experience the same graphical stutter or long load times. This effectively leverages the compute power of users playing games on Stadia to provide savings to users who follow. As time goes on, we'll be able to eliminate graphical stutters from pipeline compilation altogether, thanks to users playing our games in the cloud. And this was provided by Derek Bollner, software engineer, and Bob Frazier, technical lead manager. Man, oh man, oh man. So shout out to you in the chat. Let's see what you got to say in the chat. Tommy Rocks 81 says AC Vahalia could use sure use some pipelines. Well, here's the thing. There are many complications when it comes to developing for a platform, right? And one of the biggest complications is, how does your engine, when it comes on Stadia's behalf, how does your engine run in culmination in Stadia's APIs, all that stuff, right? And they spoke to that to a degree at this past keynote. And they've identified the fact that utilizing your engine, you know what I'm saying, and trying to merge it onto Stadia is a little bit more cumbersome than what they anticipated and what they had hoped for. So they're doing some things to try to simplify that process. So with that being said, Tommy, I imagine that what you see with Valhalla, when you're like, oh man, this is crazy. Without this technology, it would be even worse. You know what I'm saying? So that's where I think as we continue to play, as we're seeing improvements, and we're starting to see hiccups in some things here and there, but when it comes to the jank, as they explain it, where the smoothness gets held up simply because of load times or assets loading in the background and things like that. This is a technology that makes it smoother, even at times where it may not be the smoothest here and there, little hiccups here and there with certain games, right? But imagine what you're dealing with on other platforms where the same title might be a rough ride altogether. So here's a little peer behind the veil as it relates to Vulkan, as they said, the pipeline technology that is there with Vulkan. And I don't know if this is exclusive to Vulkan. If it is, then that's another check mark on why Stadia more wisely went with Vulkan instead of the x86 architecture, the Windows x86 architecture, as we've seen in other places. And it also shows you how Stadia took that extra step to try to make gameplay smoother based upon you just simply doing what you want to do, which is play the games that you want to play. So when we sit here and we say things like, look, we got to give Stadia the roses up front. We got to mention this stuff, and when people make comparisons to Stadia and say, hey, look, I have a better and smoother experience with Stadia opposed to said platform, that's not something you want to just gloss over and say, well, all cloud gaming is great. No, you want to highlight it. It's not about pounding your chest and waving a flag simply for a platform. It's to point to this tech and say, look, this is a standard bearer. This is what we want. So if GFN tomorrow can do something similar, great. We'll pound our chest for GFN. If xCloud can do it Thursday, we'll pound it. But you know what I'm saying? But you don't want to overlook it and just say, well, I want to shake a leg for all cloud gaming. Yeah, you can do that. But when it comes to these differences, you got to point it out. Just like when people point out the differences of more games being on other platforms, great, you want to point that out. So you can say to Stadia, look, this is the standard bearer as far as the games that you want to get on the platform. So that's what we talk about when we say give Stadia its flowers right now. You can't overlook this performance. And these are the things that they're implementing in order to make this performance top-notch and be the standard bearer as far as how you want games to play on cloud gaming right now. Very important to do that. It's important to point out, yes, XYZ is getting this game, or XY, and this, we want this game on Stadia. So Stadia, when it comes to your catalog, work more towards this. You can do that without saying all the doom and gloom and, oh, Stadia is gonna die. And in reverse, when it comes to Stadia's performance, things like how they implement the pipelines, the AI and the machine learning, it's also as equally as good to say, look, Stadia is outperforming its peers. It plays this way with this game. It plays this way on this screen, all this other stuff. Hey, xCloud, GFN, whoever, this is what we want you to do with that games lineup, and this is how we want it to play. You don't go anywhere with technology when you disregard the things that it does well. You don't go nowhere with it. So you got to give them the roses when they're due. All right? So, great stuff to see. I love seeing this techie type of stuff. I know a lot of that may have flew over some people's heads and they're like, oh gosh, well, I know if I play a game, I'm adding to make it better. Thanks, MM2K. There are those out there as well that didn't want to read all this stuff, rather would hear it. So that's what this exercise was for, and we talk about it on the back end. But shout out to all of you in the chat for listening to this. We appreciate it. And shout out to Tommy Rocks. Tommy Rocks says it's not bad. It's just the frame rate is so variable. I'm gonna be honest with you, Tommy. You may be a little nice about that one. I mean, maybe it's my issue, but Valhalla for me wasn't the greatest experience on Stadia. They could definitely do better. So I mean, I'm with the notion to where I get where you coming from. Maybe sprinkle a little bit more pipelines on that one, but that's okay. Every game ain't gonna be perfect. This is still earlier on. It's still overall that the games on Stadia well outperform their peers, and we want their peers to do better. And this is the standard bearer, and that's okay. You know, they can do better. They keep working at it. And we want Stadia to look at the standard bearers for a catalog. You know what I mean? It's still early. They're still building. So nobody's doomed. GFN and xCloud ain't doomed because they don't perform like Stadia. And Stadia is not doomed because they don't have their catalog. Still early. You know, so it's great to talk about these things and talk about these things without all the conflation and all the conjecture. But Tommy, I agree with you on that experience. That's why I have yet to dedicate myself to Valhalla on Stadia. I'll play all the other Ubisoft games. That's one that I kind of avoid. Tommy also says it's a shame Ubi ports their Xbox of most versions of most games. It should be like Division 2 Breakpoint. Yeah, the thing is, I think it's the engine, Tommy. I think it's the engine. I think that Snowdrop engine in Stadia and that team that worked on Division 2, although it was just a perfect storm to where, like, look, Far Cry 5 is a much older game, right? What's that, the Dexia engine or something like that it's on, and they can't get a 60 frames per second mode on there. Well, right now they can. It's got something to do with that engine, and I don't think it has anything to do with Ubisoft's dedication to the platform, but they're running on so many different engines and things like that, that if it's Snowdrop, there you go. And that's why I was so excited about X Defiant being on Snowdrop. You know that game was going to run smooth on Stadia. So there's these particulars behind the scenes, y'all, that really decide how smooth things run. And I think that's what you're running into, to where even though you might have these pipeline caches and have the compiling nature of using previous gameplay that Stadia uses to implement these in a more effective way to make gameplay better, even though you have that, you still it can't overrun and oversaturate the fact that there has to be engine compatibility to the Stadia platform. And hopefully it's going to get better as they, invest more resources into working with developers to make these games a lot smoother. You know what I'm saying? Yep. So AC and Tommy Rock says Div 2 uses Snowdrop. Absolutely. That's why that's so smooth. Apparently the Snowdrop engine and Stadia are a match made in heaven. Mwah! And AC uses Anvil. Exactly. And I think Far Cry 5 uses Anvil too. So if that's the case, and I think it does use Anvil. So if that's the case, Tommy, if you really think about it, it's hella impressive that Assassin's Creed Valhalla rather, runs the way that it does on Stadia, because that's a more graphically demanding game. I'm pretty sure a bigger game, open world game, than Far Cry 5, and they can't even get 60 frames on Far Cry 5, where I believe there's a 60 frame mode on Valhalla, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. So to me, that's hella impressive. All right. Also, when you look at, again, the things that they're doing as far as taking those engineers and making those games better, instead of just saying, here, look, we're putting games on the platform for y'all to play. It really shows you that Stadia has a better dedication to the gamers up front. See, I think at the offset, Stadia wanted, and it's really evident now, if you look at the development tool set that there was at launch, if you look at the things that they've said pre-launch, and if you look at this whole pipeline technology, the things that we've been saying on this channel way back when, I feel like are more evident now. It starts to appear like that what Stadia was trying to do was that they weren't trying to put a premier platform out there to compete with Xbox and PlayStation. They wanted to get as many users playing these games, training the AI and the machine learning, maturing these pipelines, so when they really are ready to burst out of the seams, they can really do it. They wanted a lot of user data and a lot of player data. I think that was more paramount for them back then. So they used ways to try to get players to just even entertain it or play it or give data. Like, for instance, if I'm a hardcore gamer and I want to play a bunch of games and you put 10.7 teraflops on a stage, yeah, that might be for the developers, but that could have allure to the hardcore gamer as well. The hardcore gamer who might not be within our demographic. You shoot for them. And what's the worst that's going to happen that they possibly thought? Possibly. What's the worst that's going to happen? Hardcore gamer comes here. They play a game or two. A week or so or a month or so later, they don't like it and they leave. Guess what? They still play games on the platform and made the platform better. They help mature the pipeline. They help train the AI. They help train the machine learning. Do you see what I'm saying here? Is this starting to make sense? And we've been saying that that's what the data collection phase. Shout out to Run Jump Stomp of Nerd Nest and Stadia Cast for pointing that out. Data collection phase. I think that was a higher priority then was simply of, let's put games out here that'll bring people here. Let's advertise this in a way that will get people that might be vaguely interested even to try it. And if they leave, so what? We got their data, right? And then you fast forward to now and you see where that may have been useful for them, but not as useful to us. What's more useful to us is you work to get the games over here ASAP. We know you got 500 games in the pipeline, but speaking of, no pun intended, you got 500 games in the pipeline, or maybe a little bit less now because SG&E is closed. But those games seem to be more in the back end. How about we do something to where we get more of these games in the front end? How do we do that? Our resources are tied up. And that's where SG&E may have been involved. And let's not only get more games that people want, let's not work towards that, but let's reassure that these games get on there faster and they perform better. That's caring more about the front end equally than just putting all your chips on the back end of this. What do I mean by that? We know that cloud gaming is still not going to be a premier platform 5, 6, 7 years, possibly years from now. It's going to be after that. Stadia knows that. xCloud knows that. Everybody knows that. So you may have seen a situation where up front, the initial investment in the games wasn't as paramount as getting the data, right? For the back end, when cloud gaming does reach its apex. And now I think they realize that it's important to do both, where they may have not realized that in the front end. So all important stuff. Those are just my thoughts on this stuff. I love seeing this stuff. I hope you guys enjoyed me at least reading that part and giving my quote unquote conjecture on it. But I think that with implementation like this, with the investment on the dev tools, it's just going to get crazier and crazier and crazier. I know there's a lull in information that we're getting right now, but it's always like that in the summer, and especially with these guys. They keep everything close to the vest, and you really don't get the explosion until it's ready to pop. There is no circular that goes out, it's about to pop. No, they don't do that. You know what I'm saying? And that's that's the nature of how they disseminate their information. But I think all in all, we're going to have a lot of good stuff to look forward to. With that said, that's it from your boy MM2K. Enough with my babble. Let's get back to this chat. We got the homie Tommy Rock saying AMD Ryzen 5 3600 to 6000 cards would be a dream scenario. Stadia Pro Gaming says, boom! Stadia Dosage News, dropping truth bombs. Appreciate you, good friend. Callie Burker says, yeah, AC Valhalla has no 60 frame mode. There we go. See, I didn't know that. I'm sorry. Sorry. I won't be on that one. I played a little bit of it because, thanks to the cross progression thing with Ubisoft. But yeah, if there is no 60 frame mode on Stadia, we can't do that. Tommy says, I think that's due to the Vega cards. I really hope Google goes for the new Ryzen CPUs. That could help. That could be better with the engine, but it's the engine. I think it's the engine. Again, I'm going to assume that Division 2, with all of the content that it has, I think that may be a more graphically demanding game, or very close to it. They may either be on equal footing, or Division 2 might be more graphically demanding with all the stuff that's in the game right now. That's a smooth 60. That's a buttery smooth 60 frames per second. Where you can't even get a 60 frames per second on Far Cry 5. So it might be a little bit more than just the hardware. I think it got to do something with the engine. My homie Storm talks about the memory cache. He thinks it's got something to do with the memory. Could be multiple things. Could be hardware related. But at least up front, we know that we got a situation where it really depends on that engine right now. And hopefully they can work with the devs to alleviate that issue. And even Anvil games can run a buttery smooth 60 frames per second. Callie Burkilla says facts. And who else we got up in here? We got Charles Aran, and we got everybody that we hit up here. Callie Burkilla says, salute MM2K for always keeping us on the info, man. I appreciate it, man. Because I know what you guys and gals want. And what I try to do, and I was having a conversation with some good content creators about this. When it comes to doing this, and I'm going to veer off into a little mini rant here. So hopefully you guys, this is a mini rant, and this is a special message to my journalist friends. I'm not going to get too much into the weeds about what's going on because a lot of it is silly, but we got to do better. I look at the trajectory of the things that you guys and you gals want. So I provide that, but I provide that from a fact-based place. So let's just say we have a situation where something ain't popping with Stadia. Let's take Outriders, for instance. I love Outriders. Attempt, I'm talking about the game altogether. I love what the genre, what it's about, and I love Stadia. But those two, even though there has been significant improvements as of late, those two, at least from launch, didn't merge well together. I know that we deal with a lot of negative stuff that is unwarranted, but because of that, I'm not going to come out here and tell y'all that Outriders runs great on Stadia. And on the same token, because we know we deal with a lot of unvetted and unwarranted negativity, I'm not going to create an artificial balance of weighing a negative connotation versus positive information that we've researched and vetted. I'm not going to do that just to create artificial balance. If the majority of stuff that we're looking into happens to be positive, that's just the way that it is. Nobody asked RDX to change their positivity about Xbox. Even when Xbox didn't launch with any games, they maintained positivity. They may have mentioned things here and there they didn't like, but they maintained their positivity to the dismay of a lot of gamers. Nobody asked any PlayStation podcast to do that or channel to do that. And we're not going to do that here at Stadia, even though people think that Stadia is the lesser platform. So yeah, y'all should bow down and just be negative about it because that's what the rest of the idiot herd is doing. No. If the information, if the news that we get, if the stuff that we get vetted, the stuff that gets cascaded to us on good footing, a good authority is positive, sorry. You know what I'm saying? So what I'm saying to my journalist friends is that it's important for not only the Stadia community, but the broader gaming community, that despite your own personal feelings, you pivot your information telling off of facts. I get it. We got a job to do. But as I said on Twitter, even though we have a job to do, preserving the sanctity of facts is a job that we can none of us deny. And if before you start running with stories that you think will be hot, if you're not sure of where to go to vet them, let me help you out. You can go to some of the biggest Stadia YouTube content creators for assistance. For instance, I'll run them down the line in no particular order. Sunny Cloud Gaming, Nerd Nest with Stadia Cast and their other Stadia content, Nerf Report, my brother Clivey Linden, Jim Beer Gaming. And we don't think we do a too shabby job here ourselves. Those are just some of the people. Just some of the people. But I think you'll do a good job if you put those people on your list. Because what we've seen this week was shameful and very embarrassing. And I have to admit, I've seen it particularly for one publication I didn't expect to see it from. Now, I don't always agree with everybody from every publication, and that's fine. But there are some publications that I put them on a pedestal because whether we agree or not, they pivot their takes on certain things from facts. I can only respect that. But today and through this week across the board, we saw multiple instances where publications didn't do that. And that saddens me that we're getting to that point. Again, I get it. We got a job to do. But as a publication, as a journalistic site, or whatever the case may be, where you're disseminating information and you're saying I'm disseminating truthful information, and you're not just doing opinionated stuff, you're disseminating truthful information. That's the stick that you want to roll off of. Your number one job is the preservation of facts. That will never die. Never. Period. All right? That's truly it from your boy. Thank you very much, y'all, for checking this out, doing something new, doing something different. Glad you guys enjoyed it. If you want to do us a huge favor, pass this along, let everybody know that we did this. In addition, do us a huge favor if you're a member of the channel. Speaking of YouTube, we're running into some decisions. I'll put it like that. We're running into some decisions that have to be made in regards to YouTube, some of our YouTube content, not all of it right now, but some of our YouTube content. If you're a member of this platform, I held a little seminar about what's going on, and I would really like for you to vote on it. Excuse me, it's called a special meeting. Go to the member content, go check out our special meeting video, listen to it, and we need y'all to vote at the end. Give us your thoughts about what's going on and what we should do in response to it. All right. And as always, you can follow us, Stadia Dosage, on Twitter, Facebook. Look for the Stadia Dosage page on Facebook. Soon we're going to be coming to Instagram, and you can check Stadia Dosage out at pntsnetwork.com/Stadia Dosage. All right. And check out all the other great content creators as well while you're there. You can catch me. If you like this content and you like my content and my contributions, you can catch me where you see the Broadband Bullies logo or the PNTS logo. The links are going to be below. And as always, you all have a wonderful, wonderful gaming day. Don't forget about the Summer Community Championships. Win over $1,000 potentially in cash prizes. Peace.